welcome to another episode of Historic Hot Laps. Got a lot to talk about today as far as news goes for all of motorsports. Let's start out the NHRA. So we talked before about John Force and his health condition after his wreck, everything that was going on there. Sounds like he's made quite a bit of an improvement, responsive, interacting with the family, still in a neuro recovery unit from the trauma that he had, but he is making improvements every day, and so that's good news, and glad to hear that for the Force family and bunch of good people. So I'm glad he's making a good recovery. I don't know if we'll see him in another car again. He's, like I said, he's 75 years old. Take a shot like that to the head and 300 mile an hour crash, it's just a lot. So I don't know if we'll see him again in any form of motorsport, but I guess we'll see how that all plays out. IndyCar news. We have a few big topics to discuss. First thing, those that follow it have probably already heard, McLaren and Alexander Rossi did not come to an agreement for any kind of contract extension, anything like that. It sounds like there was a lot of back and forth, and it's been going on all year. And they did confirm last week that they will be bringing over Christian Lundgaard from Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. He will take over that number 7 McLaren Chevrolet car next season. There's a lot going on as far as everything involved in that. There's a lot of stuff with the contracts, negotiations. I'm sure Lundgaard was a less expensive option for that number 7 car. Somebody at the Alexander Rossi caliber of motorsports, somebody who's ran Formula One, Indy 500 champion, generally a top 5 performer, several race wins, a lot of podiums. He's got a lot that comes with that package. He's very knowledgeable with the sport, cars, how to respond. He's part of all these testing for that reason, among other things. But I'm sure the price tag was a little different between the two. Sounds like it was pretty mutual as far as everyone kind of parting ways there. Just couldn't agree on the terms of a contract. So with that, Lundgaard going to the number 7. You've got Award, who's still got at least a year, maybe 2 years left. And then Siegel just signed a multi-year deal. That means that is the youngest team by far of drivers. Award would be the most senior in age, and I believe he's 25 years old. So pretty crazy for McLaren to put all their faith in these young drivers, but maybe that's what they need, that shakeup. Even though Rossi has been performing better than both those other cars all season, he'll land somewhere for sure. A driver like that doesn't go without. I'm surprised that other leagues aren't trying to recruit him already. Maybe they are, we haven't heard, but a sports car team or something like that. I hope he stays in IndyCar. That would be the best thing for all of us as fans, but could maybe end up back at Andretti because there should be some openings there. RLL is going to have some openings, at least one opening now that Lundgaard's going to be leaving. He could go over there, and him and Graham could maybe reshape that program. A lot of things could happen. I do believe for the RLL, it'll probably be Yuri Vips, as he's been kind of on the backlog of drivers for that team as a fill-in. Theo Porcher still could be in the mix somewhere, so we'll see how that falls. It's pretty crazy. I know there's been a lot of rumor for Rossi to go to Prema. I don't see that as being something that'll happen unless they bring in some sort of price tag. And Rossi he's going to want to get in a team that wins, right? Like, he's not going to want to be in a startup unless he's got some long-term goals. Maybe he invests in the team and becomes like a Castro Neves deal where he's a driver and part owner. I don't know if he's got the cash for that. Him and Ed Carpenter share a plane together. They're obviously good friends off track, but I don't think Rossi's going to want to end up in one of those cars because they're just not competitive. But who knows? I guess we'll see how it all goes. Talking about Prema again, some Prema rumors. Obviously, we just talked about the Rossi thing, but looks like it's almost a for sure thing that Logan Sargent might be on the Prema lineup for 2025 with that new team, as he parted ways with his F1 deal over at Williams. So I guess we'll see what happens there. Callum Ilott still in the mix. Obviously ran with McLaren a little bit this season is running World Endurance right now. Prema has openly said they've got their eye on him. And then there's also history with Theo Porcher. So a lot of MVP type draft picks right now in the IndyCar world. So we'll see how all those seats line up. I believe VK is still working on a deal to stay with Ed Carpenter, or maybe he'll go to RLL and something else will change. There's so many things that could happen. So I guess next thing would be NXT news. Real kind of vague statement, but Junkos Hollinger dropped Lindsay Brewer from the contract for what they called unfulfilled contract obligations, which I'm guessing comes down to financials. She was probably supposed to bring in some sort of financials that didn't meet what they had agreed on or something like that. Racing costs money, so either sponsorship deal fell through that she had lined up or personal finances. It's hard to say, but she, being new to the NXT world, it was kind of exciting to see what she was going to do over the season. I know they haven't had anything real stellar as far as results, but now I guess that's over. More Junkos Hollinger stuff going on there. So we'll see who they end up putting in that car for the rest of the season, if they even run that entry. They should. Their NXT program's pretty decent, so I'm sure they'll find somebody with some sort of cash flow to fill that seat. NASCAR news. Chicago, we'll talk about the race when we get to the recaps. It's a pretty interesting weekend, but while in Chicago, NASCAR debuted their concept for an EV car, EV stock car. Some crazy concept price of like $1.5 million to build this thing, and I don't know, they're saying a goal of carbon neutral by 2035. I don't know. I don't see that as taking over the sport. Maybe they have like a side EV league, kind of like Formula One does with Formula E, using the terminology and using crowd push that way, but I just don't see it. It's gonna, the core audience isn't gonna want that. Even 10 years from now, they're not gonna want that, going into a 2035 season or whatever. It's not, I just don't see it. I can see it being some sort of entertaining, like sidebar league type deal, but I don't see NASCAR being a carbon neutral car and fully electric. I mean, nobody's gonna want to watch that. Formula E is proof of that alone, and those cars sound similar due to the hybrid status of, say an F1 car or whatever. It's still not right, and it's still not anything exciting that anybody wants to watch all the time. Not like NASCAR pulls for numbers now. So we'll see how that goes with the old EV carbon neutral goal. Another announcement that was made, the Wood brothers have a new driver for the number 21 car next season in Josh Berry. Josh Berry currently at that Stewart-Haas team was one of the what ifs. Where's he going to go? Great driver, kind of finding his stride this year with Stewart-Haas's setup. Had a great Xfinity series. He was kind of, until he went to JRM, he didn't have a whole lot going on in Xfinity, but then kind of got it together, got a good team under him, and just showed that he does have the ability. Then been to Stewart-Haas this year, but with them closing up shop, needed somewhere to go. Wood brothers, open arms, reaching out. The downside to that is what's going to happen with Harrison Burton. I feel like a little more time, he's going to put up more results than he is now. It's kind of tough because that Wood Brothers Penske Ally car, you would think it would be running a little bit hotter this year. But honestly, Penske overall until recently, they weren't doing all that much. They've got this hot streak now, and they've got everybody locked into the playoffs in their main core 3 cars, but the first half of the season hasn't been amazing for them other than the couple wins, and they've had some stuff, but take any of it, for example, like Cindric kind of fell into that win, and then they've just had a few other problems. If I was to guess where Harrison Burton will end up, I'd say Colleague, but again, it's a guessing game at this point. The other thing with Josh Berry going to Wood Brothers is what was going to happen to Rodney Childers. Stewart-Haas, was he going to follow him over there? Well, it was announced that he will not be going to the Wood Brothers. He will not be following his current driver in Josh Berry, but he will be going to Spire Motorsports to run that program for Corey LaJoie's number 7 car. So that'll be interesting to see. I feel like Corey LaJoie is going to gain a ton of momentum off that for next season. So 2025, that team will be something to watch. Some Xfinity news. We talked about Logano stepping in for Hailie Deegan for the Chicago race. We can recap that, but nothing too exciting on the results. Obviously, he wasn't going to fail, but he didn't, win or anything like that. It didn't show that that car was 100% and it was all driver, but there's definitely some bad blood now between Hailie Deegan and AM Racing. Obviously, when they made the announcement that Logano was going to take her seat, that makes her ineligible for the playoffs due to missing a race by alternate driver without a waiver, all the nonsense we talked about with Kyle Larson in the Indy 500. Same rules, but as soon as that announcement was made, Hailie Deegan locked up her social medias, which she's very much on all the time, and that's kind of why her fan base is how it is. Very in the moment type of fan base. Got rid of AM Racing, everything on all her social medias. So with that, she's done. They both put out statements that they were gonna separate their time. I've got a copy of Hailie Deegan's statement here. I'll read. Kind of puts her perspective on it. The AM Racing one was pretty neutral, but Hailie Deegan had this to say during her statement: "The only thing I am focused on is getting back to being competitive. That is all that matters to me. I'm working as quickly as possible to find the best opportunities to get back to the track. I'm thankful for the following that I have and everyone who supports me. It's truly only me that knows the whole story and what I need to succeed." So obviously some bad blood there. I don't know. She's not a bad driver. She's very talented. She was very good in the off-road series. She did K&N regionals, had a race win, maybe a couple race wins, but definitely one for sure. A lot of podiums. She ran up front. She had a good team as well. Even then, you still have to be a decent driver to get that car all the way to the end and in the winner's circle. So she's not a bad driver. She's got a following. I think sponsors like her as long as this deal doesn't shake that up. She brought some sponsorship to the table, obviously, for AM Racing. They've got a lot of shakeups going on in that organization this season anyway, and now a driver shakeup's even different. So single car team, rookie driver, shaking up, the back office stuff. It wasn't, the stars were definitely not aligned for that team to be successful this year, but I guess we'll see where she ends up. If she lands in Xfinity, if she goes back to regionals, if she stays in dirt track racing, because she still does that on the side. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Looking at this is the NASCAR TV broadcast of 2025. This is a mess. This is, as much as everybody took the IndyCar deal with Fox and was kind of hit or miss on it, at least it's all going to be within one network. So here's kind of the layout for 2025 for NASCAR. This is what they've released so far. Rounds 1 through 14, including the All-Star race and the Busch class, will be a mix of Fox, FS1, and Amazon Prime, because they have that Prime deal, and that's where Dale Jr. is going to be to commentate on some things from what we've heard and what he announced, I believe, earlier this year. Round 15 through 19 will be exclusively on Amazon Prime, so there will be no over-the-air broadcast for those. Round 20 through 24 will be on TNT and then Max, which is formerly known as HBO. And then rounds 25 through 38 are on NBC and USA Network, and obviously Peacock with that. So second half on the NBC platform. So it's a mess. You've got, essentially 4 different things you got to have to watch a full season. And then all practices and qualifying will be a mix for Amazon for the first 16 races, Max for the last 19 races, and some other stuff, FS1s in the middle, FS2s. So honestly, if we were upset about the IndyCar deal, the only thing that I'm upset about is the streaming thing, but it sounds like they're working on that. But if we were upset about that deal, we need to be thankful, because being a NASCAR fan next year is going to be tough, just to try to find coverage. So we'll see how that all goes. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. All right, let's cover some race recaps. We'll start off with USAC. We had USAC National Sprints at the Lincoln Park Speedway. Friday night feature win went to Logan Seavey. That was his 9th USAC win of the year. Back-to-back wins, because he won at Macon the week before too. So back-to-back wins for Seavey. As of Friday night during the feature, 9th USAC win of the season. And then Saturday night goes back-to-back, making it 3 in a row. Logan Seavey again 10 race wins this season so far, so he's on a good roll. He's making some good money. Pretty awesome to see that. Obviously, the week of the 4th of July, we had some stuff off. So Kubota High Limit sprints were off week. World of Outlaws also on an off week. And then we had a little bit of Midwest action for the two majors. We'll start IndyCar at Mid-Ohio road course. Mid-Ohio is generally, aside from qualifying and trying to test the limits, it's generally a pretty calm race overall. Once you get past the first couple laps, it just seems like whoever takes the lead kind of runs away with it as long as the strategy works out, blah, blah, blah. It all works out for them, right? So this one is actually a little more exciting. We had the debut of the new hybrid system, so that was always going to be a what if, what happens here, what happens there type deal. So debut of the new hybrid system, which was super cool. It seemed to work pretty well. There was a few things in practice where it didn't work out for them, like trying to run the reverse gear and the restart and all that. I think that was just little bugs working out things here and there, but did end up working out for the most part. Start the race off. The only real big issue was Dixon had an issue with the hybrid unit right out of the gate, losing power, lost battery charges. Ended up starting the race under yellow because the formation laps were done. It was time to go racing, and then Dixon had to fall out from there. So rough weekend for Dixon. They took the car back. He kept his helmet on, tried to do his thing, took his helmet off, did interviews, and then 5 minutes later he's back suited up on the track trying to get some points, which I get. You've got to cycle these engines. You got to try to make up some points, hoping that you're not dead last and maybe can scrape a point or two off the bottom, to just try to keep yourself in that top 5, top 10 championship hunt, which Dixon's always right there. So it's good to see him go back out, but that's just a tough day for the Ganassi guys, especially being that you had Pelot start out on pole. So, two different tales for those drivers. But, green flag drops and things just kind of rolled through. Didn't have any real crazy mix-ups. A lot of good passing, some good action on the track. Seems like overtake with the hybrid system was pretty awesome to see. And then the most exciting part was the strategy game, and then Pato Award taking over towards the end and leading it out to the finish and getting his first legitimate race win. Well, I can't even use the term legitimate. First actual race win that he knew of. Obviously, he got the St. Pete win because Newgarden was disqualified, first race of the year, and he was in second. So technically 2 race wins in the books, but the first actual race win where he was the first one across the line to take the checkers. So congrats to that team. Really, McLaren did a pretty good job overall in that one. Their new hybrid light system is cool, how they've got lights on each corner of the cockpit there showing the charge status and the deployment status. And everybody kept mentioning it in the broadcast and on all these other things that it was the coolest setup for that, and it's definitely going to be probably what you see everybody go to. So if you see everybody go to that, McLaren was the first. I bet we have more than one team that has it by this next race weekend here in Iowa. So doubleheader, by the way, so that's exciting. But yeah, I think that you'll see a lot more of that. But overall, good race, good racing. Nothing real insane, but it was just good overall, and congrats to Pato on that. Now, NASCAR in Chicago, street race, always questionable. This is the second year of this setup and this street race. Obviously, Shane Van Gisbergen was the ultimate pick for both Saturday and Sunday, as he was running a Trackhouse deal on Sunday and Saturday. Full-time Xfinity driver, but jumping in the Cup Series on these ones. Starts out, you also had Kyle Larson running the Xfinity race in that number 17 that Hendrick has for the random Xfinity one-offs, getting him some more time on track. And honestly, that was probably one of the best Xfinity races of the generation, of it being called Xfinity. I think you go back to the Busch Series and you might have had some good races, but that was one of the best ones that I've actually been able to get through in one shot, kind of nail-biting action. Really, you just had SVG and Larson going back and forth all day on that. So that was pretty sweet. Overall, stage 1 goes to SVG, stage 2 goes to Austin Hill. It looked like he was going to have a pretty good day with it, and then SVG just did his thing and takes the win home. So becoming a real crowd favorite there, especially in Chicago. SVG's popularity is going through the roof, so it will not surprise me to see him full Cup ride next year with somebody. He's obviously got to learn ovals and whatnot still. He's getting better though, but he still struggles in that. But just for playoff contention alone, he'll get the street race wins. He's shown that. Xfinity race goes to SVG. Now let's jump over to Sunday, the Cup race. Also, I forgot to mention the Xfinity race. Weather was perfect. Everybody's worried about rain being this time of year. Chicago rained out last year. Same issues. It didn't rain out, but had rain issues. So going into Sunday, it's looking like you might have a chance of weather again. Everybody's getting worried about it. So you start off, goes kind of as expected. Stage 1 win goes to SVG, and then everything kind of falls apart for all the guys you thought were going to take over and win this race. Between tire barrier mishaps and all kinds of things, there's a few different situations where you had going in too hot in the corners, going in too deep, and then not making your corner, running somebody else off. Honestly, it was quite a shakeup as cars were getting wrecked and everything else. But stage 1, SVG, the favorite pick for the day, right? Stage 2 actually went to Joey Hand. This is his first stage win in Cup Series, so congrats to him on that. I know that was exciting. It looked like he was going to play for a podium towards the end. And I think, if I remember right, he's still got a top 5, I believe. He's all smiles at the end of the day, so that's exciting for him. And then the win, actually, goes to Alex Bowman. So Alex Bowman back in the playoff picture, shakes things up once again. What's crazy is Bowman had a mix-up with Bubba and kind of ruined Bubba's day, but best overall lap averages were for Bubba Wallace, and he ended up finishing 13th. So he's still fighting for playoff points, still trying to get into it. I don't know that he's going to make it. I mean, this race win, every new winner is just further down the line for him. So I don't see him getting a race win as his way in the playoffs. I feel like he's going to have to podium a couple times and try to get some playoff points and maybe some stage wins, but he just never seems to, he's fast, but he never seems to be in the right place at the right time to get those and complete things. So we'll see how that goes overall, but congratulations to Alex Bowman getting that number 48 car back in. I know he was excited, feeling better. He's been on a bit of a slump. There was a lot of questions on his contract renewal after next year and all that, but I think he's shown he still got it. So I believe he only led a couple laps there at the end. He got it right at the end. And then the crazy thing too with that race, while we're recapping, is this went on to being a timed race due to the weather holds, cautions, track drying, all that kind of stuff. So it was almost like watching a sports car race. You had your time left counter at the top of the screen, and you knew that at 8:20 local that race was going to be over. So that was kind of cool for the strategies, because essentially that's a one-stop race anyway, give or take a little bit of extra laps, but overtime might be sketchy on a one-stop deal. But it's basically a one-stop race, and you had all these different delays and caution laps and everything with fuels and tire changes and with wets to slicks and who's got the right strategy and all that. So kind of interesting, but ends up being a timed race. Bowman secures it right at the end of the time limit, takes the white flag and then the checkered. So I don't remember ever I'm sure it's happened before. I don't have all the records obviously, but to my knowledge, in my generation, I've never seen a timed race for that. It's either called fully or gone back and finished, postponed to the next day, whatever it may be. But I'll just end up being like, hey, this race has to be done at 8:20 on Sunday local. They put the timer up. It was a really cool way to finish it. So pretty awesome. It was a really good race. I believe they extended it after this year. They're extended one more year, and then they're up for another contract extension. So we should see at least the Chicago Street Course next year, and hopefully further on, because it's pretty exciting to see for what it's worth.
A.J. Foyt, 1972 Daytona 500 champion, has come to second. Remember a year ago, Foyt flipping 6-7 times down here in turn number 1, side over side. He's back, just as tough, just as strong, just as great as ever. Probably the greatest driver of our time in America.
And welcome in to the history portion here at Historic Hot Laps. We've got one of the greatest of all times we want to talk about today, Mr. A.J. Foyt himself, Anthony Joseph Foyt Jr., SuperTex, whatever you want to call him. He's a living legend. It's one more than probably anybody, anywhere, in anything. He can drive anything with wheels. He's been close to losing his life just to chase the dream of winning, and he's made it out. So, born January 16th, 1935, Anthony Joseph Foyt Jr., undoubtedly one of the most famous names in racing history. If you look at what an all-around driver who's done it all, he's got 67 race wins in his USAC, aka IndyCar career, 159 race wins overall, 4 Indy 500 wins. He's part of that prestigious club of 4-time winners, the 4 for 4, if you will. In 1964, SuperTex set the USAC record for consecutive national wins with 7 straight victories. To this day, nobody can touch that. And as far as USAC history books go, that season is ranked as one of the highest ranking seasons in history. A.J. Foyt had a total of 18 wins in one season, all National Series wins, 10 of them in the Champ Car, aka the Indy car, 5 Sprint Car national wins, and 3 Stock Car national wins. And this was back in the day when USAC was sanctioning basically every governing body. Also back in 1961, incredibly impressive season, had 19 wins in one season. Again, all national, 4 Champ Car wins, 6 Sprint Car wins, and 9 midget wins. I don't think that one's looked at as highly as the 64 season, just due to it being 9 midget wins, and that's a little bit harder following to get into, even though still today that's one of the most competitive series we've got, is the either the Western or the Eastern Midget Series through USAC. A.J. Foyt is a name you probably hear today with A.J. Foyt Enterprises, A.J. Foyt Racing. A.J. Foyt Enterprises was established in the mid-1960s, and he became a team owner as well as the driver. There's many videos of him climbing out of the car in the pit, working on stuff, getting back in and going. He was kind of known as the mechanic driver, the all-in-one guy. A.J. Foyt Enterprises ran entries in the kart series back when that was a thing, IndyCar, and also ran a stint in NASCAR as a team owner. So he's done it all. He's got more championships than we can probably find true information on. But here are some of the highlights to his championship. We'll start with his USAC championships. Eastern Sprint Car champion in 1960, Champ Car champion of 60, 61, 63, 64, 67, 75, and 79. So 2 full decades of championship wins. And there's a lot of comparison to a guy like Scott Dixon, and they count the wins, and he's chasing him on wins, and Scott Dixon's getting close. Championship wise, he's never going to catch, but as far as overall IndyCar wins, they kind of try to compare it as apples to apples, and that's not necessarily the case. We're talking spec series, essentially a spec series. I don't want to call it a full spec series because there's slight differences, but overall it's a spec series. And back in the day, it was a thin 5-page rule book. Bring anything you can to the table. So when Foyt was winning it, it was a little different. Different days, different kind of things going on as far as what cars were available, what engine power. Foyt was doing his own thing with engines for quite a while, and he was building them for other guys. Just all kinds of stuff. But anyway, back to Champ Car wins. Obviously, we talked about for 2 decades. He also was a USAC Stock Car champion in 68, 78, and 79. So over a decade of running stock cars and winning championships. He was the Silver Crown champion in 1972. Let's talk about some of his major victories, some of the more memorable stuff. Obviously, he's got a ton of race wins, but 4-time Indy 500 winner, 1961, 1964, 1967, and 1977. So again, close to 2 decades worth of trying, getting 4 wins locked up. One of very few to do so. Super impressive. Also, 24-hour Le Mans champion in 1967. Daytona 500 champion in 1972. Pocono 500 champion of 73, 75, 79, and 81. Back when they did the California 500, he won that one in 1975. 24 Hours of Daytona. That one's pretty cool because this goes into even further into his career. 24 Hours of Daytona winner in 1983 and 1985. And then also in 1985, part of the winning team for the 12 Hours of Sebring. So endurance races were a thing he was getting into towards the end of his career. But overall, I mean, the guy's undoubtedly the best of all time. I mean, there's a lot, it's an opinion-based show, obviously, just a guy with a microphone speaking the truth on it. But my opinion, nobody better over the course of their lifetime.
On a day that started with rain and cold and ended in sunshine, the burly Texan A.J. Foyt has won his 64th USAC Championship car race, winning the Milwaukee 150. He was never in serious trouble. He broke on the pole, having qualified the fastest. He literally passed whenever he chose to. He overran the field, and he won comfortably over the second-place driver, Billy Vukovich. The margin of victory for Foyt was pronounced. Virtually a lap, at least three-quarters of a lap, as he flashed past the checkered flag. And then Billy Vukovich from Course Gold, California, came after driving a very heady race, home in second place. Only two cars in the same lap. The order of finish is Foyt, Vukovich, Tom Bigelow, Larry Dixon, Jerry Sneva, and Gary Bettenhausen. And for A.J. Foyt, his fourth victory here at the Milwaukee 150.
Champ car career, aka Indy car career, if you want to look at how the stats are written today, ran 369 races over 36 years. Just think about that for a minute. 369 races over 36 years. That is wildly impressive. It's got to be, I guess I should have done a little more research on that, but it's got to be the top tier. I mean, who else has ran 369 races or raced for 36 years other than, say, like maybe a Mario or a couple other of those guys from back in the day? But that's not a career you see these days. Dixon's fighting a little past, 25 years in his professional career. Obviously up and coming leagues are different, but and he's still competitive, but is he gonna be winning races in 10 more years? I mean, it's hard to say, but it's just wild that a guy who also turned his own wrenches did that kind of thing. So 369 races over 36 years. Champ car finishes, we talked about all the different years of being first place in that. His first race in the Champ Car Series from USAC was in 1957. We're talking old school, open cockpit, front engine, just wild times. 1957 in Springfield at the Springfield 100. And his last race, 1992, Indianapolis 500. So his USAC career went from 1957 to 1992, and that's wild. His very first USAC win in his Champ Car career was in 1960 at the Ted Horn Memorial, and his last win was the 81 Pocono 500, obviously in Pocono, which is a wild track that Indy cars don't really run on anymore due to so many things. We've lost a lot of good drivers at that track. Overall wins, 67 wins, 120 podiums, and 53 pole positions in qualifying. Just that alone, that Champ Car section of his life is wild. Most people can't even think about touching those numbers. Obviously, we've got, this day and age equivalent, and Scott Dixon is one of the greatest of this generation, and he's still knocking at that door trying to get it. He hasn't got it yet. So that's just his Champ Car career. Now, if we move a little forward, he also had quite the NASCAR Cup career. He ran 128 races over 33 years. Obviously, in today's world, 128 races over 33 years is a little different. Not full season type deals all the time. There's a couple years where he ran pretty solid, but it wasn't an all the time kind of deal. His first race, NASCAR Cup career, was 1963 at the Riverside 500, obviously Riverside, California. His last race was the 1994 Brickyard 400, and I was personally at that race, the inaugural race for the Brickyard, and remember seeing that car, that black and orange look he had, the number 14, and can't say at that point in his career he was, the most competitive guy, but he was still getting it done. He was still climbing in there, getting it done, which is more than a lot of us can say we do. His first win in NASCAR was in 1964, Daytona at the Firecracker 400, and his last win was 1972, Miller High Life 500 in Ontario. Overall, NASCAR career, he had 7 wins, 36 top 10s, 9 pole positions. Not as good a stats as his Champ Car career, but still, completely different versus open wheel to stock car. It's not easy for a lot of guys. We've seen guys cross over and do different things over the years, and none of them are ultra successful, other than say like Tony Stewart, who shares a lot of qualities that AJ Foyt has as far as being able to drive anything and having championships in multiple genres and everything else. So moving on from his NASCAR career, 24-hour Le Mans career, 1967, the Shelby Ford team, best in class, first place. What else is there to say about that? That's the dream team. Couldn't ask for more if you're going to go to Le Mans in 1967, try to win it. Moving on to, let's just highlight some events in his career, some notable things from the Foyt era, which is basically most of all of us' entire life, honestly. So looking at some of his wins, some highlights, things like that. One thing to mention, Foyt drove in the Indianapolis 500 for 35 consecutive years. So he didn't miss an Indy 500 for 35 years. So that alone is pretty impressive. Foyt's the only driver to have won the Indy 500 in both front and rear engine cars, having won 2 of those Indy 500s in a front engine and 2 of them in a rear engine. So both configurations he was able to get it done. In 1967, Foyt also won the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the Indy 500 in the same year, so he's the only driver to ever accomplish that. He's the only driver in history to record victories at all the great races, the Indy 500, the Daytona 500, the 24 Hours of Daytona, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Not to mention 12 Hours of Sebring that we mentioned earlier. So all of these historic races that are on the calendar every year, notable history in these races, he's won all of them. He's one of only 12 drivers to complete the Triple Crown of endurance racing, which is 12 Hours of Sebring, 24 Hours of Daytona, and 24 Hours of Le Mans. His overall endurance racing career is just as impressive as anything else. He has 41 USAC stock car wins, 50 sprint car, midget, and dirt champ car wins. He won the 1975 and 1976 Australian Speed Car Grand Prix in Sydney, Australia at the Liverpool International Speedway. He's won 12 major driving championships over various categories, and we mentioned some of those earlier. His USAC wins are also a record that hasn't been beat at 138 overall wins in the USAC divisions. He's also an IROC champion from 1976 and 1977. And if you haven't watched any of that stuff, the IROC racing is one of the most entertaining things out there. And they're really pushing to bring it back. There's a lot of work going on. There's going to be a race, I have to get the numbers for sure, but there's going to be a race coming up on the East Coast in the old IROC vintage stuff, which is pretty awesome. AJ Foyt also won 7 NASCAR races. Foyt and Mario Andretti are the only drivers to have won both the Daytona 500 and the Indianapolis 500. Foyt also holds the record for closed course speed, driving the Oldsmobile Aerotech at 257 miles per hour. And he set that record in 1987, which is wild to think about, at a test track in Fort Stockton, Texas. So another record for the books, 257 miles an hour. Oddly enough, one of the weird kind of oddities of Foyt's career is all the USAC sanctioned events that he won. Once CART took over the Champ Car series, Foyt never won any Champ Car events through CART. So that's kind of interesting. Granted, that was way late into the career. He had a million highs at that point, so kind of late, but it is kind of an oddity that he's won all these races in all these different leagues, but he's never won. He never won during the CART era. There's so many things we could talk about with Foyt and everything he's done and accomplished, and he's still a team owner today. He's got a couple couple of decent drivers. Obviously, he's got Santino Ferrucci with him right now, so they're doing things they haven't done in a while. They're always fast on the ovals, and he's still very much involved, even at his late age. I guess closing this out, we've kind of done this on a couple other drivers. We'll talk about the Hall of Fames that they've all been inducted into, and this is what this is the notoriety that Foyt is involved in. He was added to the Texas Sports Hall of Fame in 1967, the Auto Racing Hall of Fame in 1978, the National Midget Auto Racing Hall of Fame in 1988, the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in 1989, National Sprint Car Hall of Fame in 1990, International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 2000, Automotive Hall of Fame 2007, the USAC Hall of Fame in 2012, which the hell took so long on that one, Sebring Hall of Fame in 2018, and the Houston Sports Hall of Fame in 2019. Obviously, his operation runs out of Houston. You can call him SuperTex for a reason, born and raised in Texas boy. Took a long time for them to recognize that in Houston, but overall, just an incredible guy, an incredible driver. Just so much. We could go into story after story. I'll put a couple audio clips, show his personality and what he was all about. But
let's go to David Hobbs.
Well, I'm with A.J. Foyt in his pit. A.J., you quit the race. What happened?
Well, actually, the heat, and I had a new uniform. I had a brand new helmet, and I guess the glue that was in it just got me completely drunk. And right now, I don't think the average person can smell it 5 minutes. You want to smell it?
Yeah, I can smell it okay. Otherwise, the car was running good.
It was running pretty good. We had to draft all day, but I just got so dizzy there that I felt like I was going to injure myself or somebody else, so I just had to quit. And I just can't. I don't know how people can take dope and drive, because you're talking about a drunk. I was drunk the last 20 laps, and I figured park it before I hurt myself or somebody else.
How many more times are we going to see you back here at the Daytona 500?
Well, I hope we come back at least a couple times, but, we've had our luck. We've won about 3 of the big races here. We're happy, and we're running good today. Started off bad here when we got here, and we run good in 125 miler, and we was running good today till we had a problem on one of the pit stops. Just one of them things. We had
And just doing a follow-up real quick. I recorded the news and all that prior to a couple of stories coming out, but we haven't released yet. So just want to touch on a couple of things that popped up today after we recorded. NASCAR news, Noah Gragson is joining Front Row Motorsports in 2025. So another front row car set up for next year. Be kind of exciting to see what he does for that organization. And the big one, I didn't really cover this in the race recap, but post Chicago street race on Sunday at the Cup Series, Bubba Wallace was a little upset and gave Alex Bowman a little door check on the cool down lap. But it was pretty aggressive of a door check, just because it was up against the wall, and the way that Bowman kind of rode the wall up, and it looked pretty aggressive. It probably wasn't any more aggressive than anything we've seen in the past, but there's kind of this retaliation thing now where you're going to get a fine, possibly a point dock or whatever else. And we know Bubba Wallace can't afford to lose any points in this playoff contention. So NASCAR did come out today. They did not take any points from him, but they did fine him $50,000 for that move. It is kind of a safety violation. You're on the cool down lap. Drivers are loosening up their seat belts. A lot of them have the window nets down, waving to the crowd, whatever it may be. There's tons of conversation about this back and forth and everything else, but just know he was fined $50,000, so we'll see how things are shaking up there. Luckily for him, they did not take any points from him. And the last thing, this is IndyCar news. We talked about Catherine Legge possibly driving the ovals for the rest of the season for Dale Coyne, and she has announced that number 51 car will be hers for the Iowa doubleheader. So that'll be good to see her on the short oval, see what they can do, get some speed and whatnot for that car. She just ran really well at the Pikes Peak timed runs. She was close to setting a record, I believe, for front wheel drive car, so that was super cool. Just another, going on the piggybacking on AJ Foyt of who can drive everything. Catherine Legge can drive pretty much everything too, to different competitiveness, but she gives it her all. So a couple news stories there, and with that, we'll sign off this episode, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us at Historic Hot Laps on X and all your other social platforms for the latest updates and sneak peeks into upcoming episodes. You can reach out to us directly at historichotlapse@gmail.com. Send us your feedback, questions, comments, opinions, and additional subject matter you'd like us to cover. Thanks for tuning in.